Welcome to the bonus episode of the Champagne Comedy Podcast, where we talk about the best Australian comedy show from the 90s ever made, in this case, Frontline, and other D-Generation comedy tidbits. My name is Matt, and joining this bonus podcast today is Alison, Daniel, and Kim. Hello. And what do we mean about the bonus episode? Well, we managed to track down a particular cast member from Frontline, which we've been reviewing, and that is one of the most funniest, entertaining people, who's actually a very talented musician and theatre actor as well. He has a rich history of performing and goes way back, but he also plays one of the most funniest characters and I think completely underrated character in Frontline, and that is the Friday night funny man, Elliot Rhodes. You might know him from these performances.
Malcolm Turnbull, he sure got pull. He'll change our flag and call the Queen of Let's all sing Mandela. He's such a lucky fella compared to de Klerk, he's Suella. So let's kick them in the rear and say goodbye North Korea. Goodbye North Korea, cha-cha-cha. Our Friday night funny man is a national treasure. He's shit house.
While his name is Elliot Rhodes, his real name is Boris Conley. So I just want to say thank you for joining the Champagne Comedy Podcast for this very special bonus episode, Boris Conley.
Yeah, the Friday night funny man himself.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Well, or at least he played one on TV.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, oh goodness, I don't know where to start with this. We've got plenty of questions, so we understand that your time is valuable, and we appreciate you coming on. You're our first guest for Frontline, so and we're only scratching the surface. And straight away I thought, well, a lot of the spotlight for season one is on you for this. How did you become part of the show?
Oh, well, I was at a party, and my partner has a friend who had worked with the DGen as a producer, that is assistant producer. And I was at this party, and I was clowning around a bit on the piano and singing silly songs and doing impressions of, I don't know, all and sundry, whatever. I don't know. I was probably drunk. And and anyway, the producer was there, and she's a friend, and she said on the quiet that Working Dog, they weren't Working Dog then, but anyway, the DGen people were making a new show, and they were looking for someone who could play piano and sing. And I said, oh yeah, I'd be interested. So the next part of the process was that, because usually when those things are talked about, often at social occasions, nothing ever eventuates. You know, people say we're doing a show, and then 3 years later you go, oh, well, nothing actually happened there. But this one, there was definitely a follow-up phone call that said, can you be at for an interview or audition, in a couple of weeks? So I said, okay, sure. So I turned up thinking, because usual cattle call for auditions is, there's 50, in my case, 50 other bald-headed blokes with piano skills. They're all
50 other potential Elliots.
Yeah, all the potential Elliots. You say they're all feeling like goops. And anyway, I was the only candidate, and there was no audition. In fact, they just said, here's the keyboard. Is it okay? Will that work? And I played. It was a little Yamaha keyboard. I said, sure, that'll be fine. And I said, okay. Then they sent me they sent me a schedule, told me when to turn up and do it. And prior to that, we had to write that actual song that I was doing on the day. And so that's how it happened. That was it.
And did you write the songs that you performed?
Yes, I wrote the music. and they wrote the lyrics.
Right.
So the way it worked was that they would write the lyrics and send them. This is the days of faxes, my friends. Think of that, even before emails.
Valet faxes.
Yeah. So my wife was working in a legit job. So she had a fax machine. So the lyrics would get faxed to my wife. She'd bring them home from work that night. I would knock up a tune and get them sort of happening. And then we would have a very short production meeting where by phone, I'd ring them up and I'd sing them the song, and they'd give me feedback whether they liked it or they liked it but they wanted something changed, or they didn't like it and they wanted it to be completely different, and they'd make some suggestions. But whatever, it was all cool, and that's how we did it. And then, do you want to hear more about what happened?
Yeah, please continue.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, because the next part of the process was that they would send me a script, but it was only ever the little page of script that I was involved in. So I never knew the scenario of the whole episode.
Oh.
And so, yeah, so it was, for me, it was a bit like, that game where you draw the head of some creature and then you pass it to the next person and they do the torso and then someone else does the legs, It was a bit like that for me. I was just given the little bit that I was involved in.
When did you find out the whole context of what your performance was involved with?
When it went to air.
When it went to air, that was the first time.
That was the first time.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Throughout the series, you're a little bit of a punching bag to the rest of the Frontline team.
Yeah.
Really, you're not that well appreciated throughout, unfortunately.
Well, the whole running gag was that Mike Moore wanted to sack hated Elliot Rhodes, wanted to sack him all the time. But for the whole 3 series, he was never successful. That was the great ongoing joke about it.
So in terms of the lyrics that you were given, was there a lot on the cutting room floor? Is there like extended versions that never made it to air that might see the light one day?
Well, here's the thing. They had, the rumour has it that they only ever spent 2 minutes as a group on the Elliot Rhodes lyrics. And quite frankly, there are some of them that are brilliant and all of them are good, very, very, very witty and clever. They just have a brilliant way with words. And I think because maybe if they were just that little sort of throwaway attitude to it, it had a sort of lightness and, so I don't know, the skill was in it without it being heavy and sort of laboured. So, and that's why it lent itself so well to the music. It was quite easy to work on their lyrics.
Were either they or you inspired by any particular comedy acts or musical acts that were sort of known at the time? Because it clearly not inspired by Clark and Daw or sort of anything like that. But were there musical acts, comedy acts? No in particular.
No. Well, yeah, but all of them, I suppose, to an extent, all satirical music comedy. I mean, you could go back to Tom Lehrer, and you could even go back to Gilbert and Sullivan. That style of
So the brief was Tom Lehrer, but rubbish. Was it? Yeah.
yeah, kind of. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And what about the outfit, Elliot's outfit? Did you have much involvement with that?
Oh, that was Kitty who did the costumes.
Oh yes,
And
Kitty Stuckey.
That's right.
Like she later became very well known for all of the ridiculous garb that she put Kath and Kim in.
Yeah.
So
Well, she was
really got a good start on Frontline.
She was great because she basically obviously was a great op shopper, and she had like rows and rows of op shop gear and all sorts of bits and pieces and everything. Yeah. So Elliot, no problem. I what a variety of stuff. And that was the other thing. I never knew what I was going to be dressed in on the day. I'd turn up to the studio, go and do makeup and costume, and I never knew what they were going to dress me in. So that was another thrill. Partly because I've done a bit of theatre, and in theatre, so much of theatre is about the hard sort of serious acting, not about your costumes and not about the makeup, but this show was all about the makeup and the costume. It was like a kid's idea of what it was like working in theatre.
Well, speaking of theatre, you do have a quite a bit of a musical and theatre background. So, what brought you into that part of the arts and entertainment?
From purely speaking of music theatre, I was very interested in it as a kid, and I was really inspired by. I was brought up in a very Christian household, but the breadth of the music that was sort of allowed to be listened to was things like Godspell and even Jesus Christ Superstar, which was surprising because it's quite, it's not anti-religious.
It's irreverent, isn't it, compared to...
I guess
it was quite shocking at the time to some Christians, wasn't it, in the 60s? Yeah.
It was quite shocking, yeah. A bit like Life of Brian, I suppose, was too later on. But I always wanted to write a musical, and I was really taken by Stephen Schwartz and, Tim Rice and Andrew Lloyd Webber and so on. So I loved I always wanted to do that, and I did actually do it. I wrote it with a friend of mine, wonderful percussionist and composer. We wrote a musical, which was a complete rewrite of the Madame Butterfly story, and it was quite successful. We toured and had a couple of incarnations in the late 80s and early 90s. So that's where I came from. But prior to that, I'd done a lot of this sort of clowning around on the piano. There was a club in Sydney in Glebe Point Road called the Toucan Club, which you might have heard of or not. It was just near Bad Manners, which is, I think Bad Manners is a coffee shop in Glebe Point Road.
Yeah, the vegetarian place. Yeah, that's near the Broadway Shopping Centre, which I closed for a time and reopened again recently.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, I worked there as a waiter, and they used to have a piano, and when business was slow, I used to get on the piano and do stuff, just clowning around, really. I'm just a show off, looking for somewhere to show off. That's basically it.
I read that you had performed at the Proms in the Albert Hall, which is so obviously having a reputation for singing bad satirical songs hasn't affected your musical career, which I'm very pleased to see.
No. That was an act I worked with, which was a tribute to the music of Ennio Morricone, and we did a show which incorporated all the Foley, all the sound effects Foley, and we created a huge visual backdrop using the shadows, moving light, the front of the stage. Amazing lighting we had, and so projections were sort of the band were on the big cyclorama at the back of the stage. So and that we did that. Oh, that toured for about 5 years in Europe, and did shows in America and quite a lot in the UK. That was great fun. That was probably the show that used my skills the best, because I didn't have any lyrics, because I'm terrible at remembering lyrics. That was a challenge in Frontline too. Because all the backing vocals were all ahs and oohs, and if you listen to that Ennio Morricone stuff from the spaghetti western era, there's very few lyrics, and also because it was quite theatrical and beautiful, inspiring music. To be able to work with that music night after night was just wonderful. So that's another thing. No, it didn't hold me back. I think maybe doing silly satirical songs. Let's say it was a side hustle.
The other thing is that, outside of performing at the keyboard, we didn't see much of you on Frontline, but there, one part of your story arc, let's call it, where I think you get a bit more of a meaty role is in the penultimate episode of Frontline, The Code, where it seems like you're finally actually sacked.
Yes.
And then turn up. Like I hate to kind of spoil this because we're a long way off from going through that episode, but
yes.
I don't know when we're going to have the opportunity to speak to you again. But that this is your life ending with the doors opening and you absolutely seething.
Oh yeah. I think the great thing was that for all those episodes, because Elliot, the wonderful thing about Elliot is, right, he thinks everybody loves him and he thinks he's really funny. And there's nothing that can dampen his enthusiasm and belief and self-belief. So although Mike Moore is patently and obviously trying to get rid of him, he just doesn't get it. You know, series after series and episode after episode. And finally, Mike Moore chucks that speech at him and he just, finally the penny drops. And he goes, this guy, after all this time, it's just the most terrible. Yeah, it's just the most terrible thing that happens to Elliot. He feels distraught.
it makes for a hell of a finale, though.
Yeah, it does. It's great, but of course Elliot rides again, so all's well that ends well.
Yeah.
What do you think Elliot's doing now? Because he's clearly unkillable like a Terminator. So what's he up to?
Exactly. Yeah, look, he would be like a Terminator. Yeah, he'd be somewhere. He'd be doing the same stuff. I don't know what he'd wear or where would you be? Maybe he'd be doing little cabaret shows.
I reckon that
his own cabaret stuff.
I like to think he'd turn up on Sky News Australia, at the end of maybe not Andrew Bolt's show, but a sort of lesser Bolt might have him on once a week to do a satire on woke culture or something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
or on the radio. The ABC used to have, they had Friday night people doing their satirical songs. Yeah, maybe Elliot would be there too.
And he can do his satirical stuff on TikTok.
Yeah. Oh, true.
What's that?
You can do. Elliot could be doing his one-off little jingles on TikTok and become a viral sensation.
That's true. And during the lockdown, of course, he would have been putting stuff out every day.
Yeah.
to keep the morale of the general population up. It would have been.
I can see Elliot maybe doing duets with Sammy J. I think it's the electronic keyboard that just sort of puts those two in similarity in my mind.
Yes, I think it'd be the generational. Yeah, it's a kind of a generational thing, isn't it? It's like you get the experienced Elliot,
the mentor and the protege,
the mentor, and then the up and coming Sammy J with.
In regards to filming, just for a lot of us already know where it was filmed, but the studios where the Frontline was actually shot, the offices. Can you tell us a bit about the office or the locations of how they filmed it?
Yes, I can.
If you can remember.
So it was shot at Ripon Lea. The first series, I'm trying to remember, because they changed location for each series, I think. But I'm pretty sure series 1 was shot at Ripon Lea in the old ABC studios in Melbourne, near what's that suburb? It's down past St Kilda. Ripon Lea, anyway. And they had the offices all set up there, and so you had two things. You had the office and all the stuff that was handheld, which Santo did a lot of the shooting. And then they had the Elliot stuff was shot actually in the ABC studios, where they still were at that time shooting the news and the current affairs. It was shot in that studio with a real legit TV camera. That's why the Elliot stuff is so, like, it's really super technicolor. When it comes across against the other stuff, it's just really highly produced. And the colours are really bright, and it's amazing. And that's why, because the rest of it, all that footage was shot on I believe, was shot on video, then transferred to Super 8, film. I think may have been, or maybe 16 mil, and then put on back onto video for the final edit.
So it's been something we've been struggling with rewatching the episodes. It's sort of in these days of the really big 4K screens, it's just like I can understand why it was done artistically, but it's not good on the eyes anymore. Going from film to video to film.
Yeah. Look, I didn't have much to do, obviously, with the technical side of it, but that I'm pretty sure that's accurate of the way they went about it. The other thing is they reputedly had a 2-day shooting schedule to shoot each episode, which is that's really thrashing it, plus any of the other locational stuff obviously was done separate to that, but the majority of it was shot in 2 days.
Wow.
So when I turned up, most of those clips were done in, God, two or three takes. I would have been in there for less than 10 minutes.
I was going to ask, does that mean you were a one-take wonder?
Would be good. It was good if I was. Let's say I had a real battle with the second one. In episode 1 was this song called Johannesburg Tango, and I'd had to fly. I had a show opening in Brisbane the night before, and I probably had a couple of sherbets there, and I had to come down on a really early flight for that. And the day before, they'd asked me to change, when we'd had our little production meeting, they changed, I'd done it a particular way, and they wanted me to really emphasise the tango aspect. So I redid it, but I hadn't really had much time to practice it because I'd been obviously away and didn't have a keyboard with me and a whole lot of things. So, that was my second go, and that was a super challenge, and I just had to steel myself to do that final take. I just said it's now or never, because I was tired. I didn't really know the song that well, and I just had to really do it. Yeah, but most of the others were pretty straight ahead, and I did have ample time to rehearse them.
Do you still, because Frontline is somewhat still relevant today, and people have been asking for it to come back, etc. But do you still get approached by people who've been watching the show, or do you still get recognised at all? And people come and go, Elliot.
Yeah, surprisingly, because I do piano gigs still, they do. But secondly, and this is really surprising, people just recognise me when I'm not doing a gig. I'm just a normal dude walking down the street, or maybe at an airport or whatever, and I can see them. They just sort of start looking at me, and they go,
"Oh, he's done it again."
Yeah, he's done it again, and yeah. So that's intriguing. I still amazing. I think also because it is current, it's still being played on being watched to this very day on Netflix, I think it is.
Well, have you been recognised when you've been overseas?
No, not overseas. There was one funny day. I was coming back I'd been in Sydney, and I was getting the plane back from Sydney, and I was in the airport, and they were running. This was when Frontline was still going live to air. I mean, live to air. It was going straight to air. You know what I mean? For the first time, and they were showing it on the big TV at the airport while I was watching myself performing, and no one else was taking any notice. It was just a very strange
That was
moment.
the point to yell, "This is me! Look, over there!"
Yeah, I know.
I've dropped out of the TV.
You know me? This is me. Oh, the tragedy. Imagine in showbiz.
Can I fast forward to the episode we're reviewing today, where they have this star-studded cocktail party for Mike, and you're there because you kind of you found out something was being catered, and all of a sudden Mike feels obliged to invite you, but you're not doing anything on Friday. Oh, but you must be busy, and you're like, no, I'm fine, I can make it.
That's right.
So, it looked like you were having a good time there, and did you expect to see all those stars?
What was great was while we were waiting to shoot, we sat around the table and everyone was there. Molly and I don't
George
remember.
Negus
There were a lot of
is there, Glenn
stars.
Robbins.
We were just sitting around casually. Yeah, that's right. You remember them all. And it was really lovely. Just having a very casual time with all these people. What nice people they were. Just lovely to hang out with. And I think Elliot in that episode was he was sort of a bit the lonely guy at the party because he was, looking at the CD collection and it's a little bit on the outer.
Well, see, the other thing is that in the episode, Elliot asked whether he should bring his piano and is very quickly refused.
Yeah, it was so quick. He barely even finished the word piano. No.
Yeah, no. Yeah. True that.
Do you think that if Frontline did come back to cover today's style of current affairs or anything like that, do you think there'll be an Elliot Rhodes 2.0 for this, or do you think the character would have moved on from there?
Well, I'd be up for it, but if that's what you mean. Yeah. But sure, they'd probably recast and find a new generation of Elliot. Who would it be? I can't think. I mean, the thing. I think in the context of the broader context of your question is when being a satire, when it went to air, I think all the current affairs shows just threw their hands up and said, "Okay, well, we've been exposed." Because did you notice how current affairs just became more blatant and horrible?
Oh,
yeah.
Post Frontline, it was like we've been exposed, so now all bets are off, and we can do whatever we like.
Well, I was going to say in regards to something that's happened recently with the Kathleen Folbig story, right? And I was watching a current affair the other night, and they did a live cross to a reporter who was in a bit of farmland to make it look like that's where Kathleen was staying with her friend, which is on a bit of remote farmland, which echoed an episode of Frontline, which Marty DeStasio is crouching down in front of a farm gate for the siege thing. And I went, oh my goodness, 30 years later, and still it goes the same pretty much. It's like nothing's changed. So I just thought Frontline called it out.
Yeah, and well, I think you're right. Come to think of it, I think there are new techniques they're using, and perhaps it is, Frontline Series 4. I can see it now. Things like one of the networks always has the caption live, right? They have a journalist standing some location somewhere. And, I don't know, it's just live. But it has no relevance to the story often, or it has a slight relevance to the story, the location, but there's nothing else about it that relates to the story, but except the caption says, the slash says, live to air, I mean...
There's just always somebody perpetually on standby.
Yeah,
Yes, it adds nothing to the
yes.
story, really. I call
also,
them the pointless live cross. You
no,
know, they cross to the person live because they can. It
yeah,
doesn't enhance the story at all.
no,
Mm.
that's right. The
Yeah.
pointless live cross. That's perfect.
Well, you're aware that Frontline is in high school curriculums?
Oh yes. Well, this gets back to was I ever recognised during the time when it was part of the curriculum just after Series 1, I think it was. And I used to get recognised by groups of school kids in the supermarket. And I could see them, they'd be going, is that him? Oh, is that really him? It's got to be him. You go over and, go over and say hello. And yeah, that was pretty funny. So it was, there you go.
They didn't ask you for any help with their essays
No,
or their homework.
no, but I think it was so great for our media studies. It was a gift to the education system, to the teachers. Absolute gift.
Yeah, I think most of us missed. Well, I was in year 12 when it came out, so I didn't have time for it to be in the curriculum. But certainly, when I got into journalism at university, it was like this. If you want to study what current affairs is like, this is it's telling it like it
Yeah,
is,
I
as
was
you
in year
say.
12
Yeah,
when the first
yeah,
series went out, and we would certainly talk about it at school, either amongst ourselves or with the teachers sometimes, just as, but yeah, never got to
yeah,
study it.
yeah.
And yeah, I was probably slightly too young for Frontline. I think it was probably first the script book, which thankfully we don't have to refer to this episode. No, don't.
There we go.
Oh, jeez.
See, I don't have
brilliant.
this. I feel left out. I don't have this.
Get
Everyone
down
get
to
out
the
your
second-hand
books.
shop, Kim.
I go there all the time. I'm getting my
I do
CDs
actually
and
have
$2.50.
it, so the episode we're about to discuss is not
Yes.
in the book. I do still have it with me, but like it was a fascinating read, and I think also like after a while I also got into Media Watch as well. I think
Yes,
I sort of think like those two pillars, Media Watch and Frontline, really did a lot for media literacy.
yeah, that's for sure.
Does the script book have a kind of characterization of Elliot in there, like it does with some of the other characters?
Let's see if I can find it. Where is it? Is it at the front or the back? Near the front.
Near the front, I think.
Yeah, because there's a character
Don't mind
profile
us.
for.
Boss.
Yeah.
You can edit
That's
this bit
fine.
down.
I'm just loving this. I love this studious energy right now.
Yeah.
Well,
We spent too much time on this.
overanalyze, we
Sorry,
rip it
Boris.
apart, and we are just that passionate. Oh, it's only just got other characters.
Sadly, we don't
Elliot Rhodes,
get
Friday
the
Night
complete
Funny
history
Man.
of Elliot Rhodes, because in this book it tells you the background to some of the main characters and what they'd previously done. I would love to know
Right.
how Elliot got the gig at Frontline, what he'd done beforehand as a sort of junior satirist. Would have been interesting.
Yes.
The only sort of clue is a mention of Wally the Worker.
Oh, they
Was it Wally the
previously
Worker?
had Wally the
Wally
Worker
the-
as the Friday Night Funny Man. Yes.
How would you picture Elliot's background, his origin story?
Yeah, good question. I reckon he would have been in amateur music theatre. In fact, I think that's true. I think he would have been in music theatre, and he would have probably developed musical friendships there. Maybe he worked with a 4-part a cappella group doing sort of cool, I don't know, maybe cool sort of topical, maybe even satirical songs.
70s commercial jingles?
Or covering, or jingles, or covering stuff of other satirists and other political commentators.
Maybe something, dare I say, undergraduate.
Yeah, look, you may dare say that. Definitely undergraduate. Yeah, something like, I think so. And then he would have had, piano training. So he would have done quite a lot of that in his life. And yeah, so
And
maybe he'd been to uni. He made all these connections at uni. Maybe he was the amateur theatrical society, and
focusing on you, now we're absolutely privileged for you to be on the show because only 24 hours beforehand, like you're still active performing, and you're currently on tour at the time of this recording. So
Yeah.
What can you explain what you're up to being active in today's practice, I guess?
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, I play piano professionally, and I work with different performers and different bands. I also have a group of community choirs that I accompany, like play the piano for. And they're a really interesting bunch of people. All the choirs have their own character, and at the moment I'm working with 5. That one of them will finish in another couple of weeks. We do our final concert. But yeah, it's a wonderful connection to just really people who love singing and people who want to, do music in a communal sort of community setting. So I get a lot out of that. And the gigs, of course, well, the choirs are during the day mostly, so that doesn't interfere with my gigs that I obviously rehearsals and stuff at night. So, little side project sometimes. I've just recorded a bit of stuff with my son, who's 32 years old now. We just did a few YouTube clips, which are gradually going to air.
Oh, what's your YouTube channel?
It's his YouTube channel is Red on White. It's called, and he records his own music, which is rock music. But this little project he's grabbed Dean Martin songs and recorded them in his own way. It taken away all the music production and just did them with piano and voice.
Wow.
And it's really cute because it just shows you the strength of those songs, how fantastic they were. And because we tend to associate that style of music with that crooning style of delivery, which is very 50s and very old-fashioned. But actually the songs had great melodies and great lyrics, getting back to Frontline, I suppose. And so when you just hear it sung in a very honest way with no bells and whistles, it's really interesting. So we recorded them under a freeway bridge in Melbourne, where there's a whole lot of free-forming graffiti. That was our backdrop, and I'm quite proud of it.
And so you should be.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
So your son would have been a toddler when you were on Frontline. Did he find it? Was he starstruck to see you and on TV, and you're there at home as well?
Yeah, I suppose so. I think kids just accept whatever's thrown at them, don't they?
Mm.
So, Dad's on television, so what kind of thing. I mean, there was a great joke. The two Ronnies. Ronnie Corbett used to do this spot where he sat in the chair and did sort of a commentary of comic commentary of what was going on in everyday affairs, and he started it with I was a bit late to work today because there was a big fight over whether the kids could stay up and watch Daddy on television. They wanted to go to bed.
Are you still friends with the Working Dog team?
I don't see them, but every now and then I bump into one or other of them, and it's always great to see them. Yeah.
Just before we go, Boris, is there anything else that you would like to say on the podcast?
Yeah, just I'd love to give a little shout out to Bruno Lawrence, who's dearly departed in heaven now. I'm sure he's in music heaven somewhere. I met the first day of shooting for my spot in the first episode. Bruno was in the waiting room where we were just waiting before we went to makeup, and I met him for the very first time. I didn't know who he was, had no idea that he was playing one of the major roles. he was such a humble guy, and he just said, we talked about playing golf and music, I think. Had this little conversation, and I thought, oh, I'll never see that guy again. And then, of course, the first episode came to air, and he was playing such a great role. I mean, and so well, so beautiful, so earthy his acting. Anyway, we did sort of bump into each other a bit during that series, and at the final wrap party, I didn't even know he was ill or that there were any health issues going on. He always presented really fantastically. He always looked super well. Anyway, the last thing, we had a conversation, and as I was leaving, he gave me a great big kiss on the lips, which is very memorable. And that's a very memorable thing about Bruno. So there you go. There's a little side story.
What a great program director there.
Yeah. That's right. The only regret I have about this interview was that I'm not at home tonight in my house in Melbourne, and in the back of my cupboard I've actually got a Frontline T-shirt, which I got from the first series, and I was going to wear it for this and then step back to the big reveal, for you. But unfortunately, that I forgot to bring it with me. So anyway.
You don't have your keyboard with you.
You can play us off.
And my keyboard's at the gig, so I can't even do a song for you right now.
Well, Boris, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time, and especially when you're touring, and making the time and effort to chat with just a bunch of comedy nerds like us, really, all about Frontline and your work. So thank you, Boris, for joining the podcast.
Thanks a lot. Great to meet you.
Thank you for listening to the Champagne Comedy Podcast, created by fans for the fans. For more information on this podcast, please visit champagnecomedy.com. Produced by Matt Fulton Productions, mattfulton.com.au.